All right, everyone, welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Tuesday, September 26, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it today. So, markets here today having another sell-off, pretty much a bloodbath across the board. Spiders down 1.6. Triple Q's down 1.7, Dow down 1.25, and the Russell, they're bringing up the rear, only down 1% a day, but that has been kind of beaten up already. So some of that repricing been pulled forward a little bit, but nonetheless, a pretty big sell-off. If you remember yesterday, I said I don't think this is over with. If you look at the VIX, we didn't really, do anything that spectacular. We read the last 2 days. And yesterday I said I would have preferred a dump below 4,300 than a gap down today and a 30-minute flush to buy the dip. We did not do that yesterday. Closed at the highs, and I can't tell you how many accounts, so on and so forth, said this is it. The lows are in, and we're going to rally into the end of the year. And we are, this is kind of what bear markets do, right? They close you at the highs, and then they just gap and go to the downside. Now, what's going on here? This is what happens when you gamma squeeze to the downside. So it was all well and good, May, June, July, but there's a reason why I kept saying 4,300, 4,300, 4,300, because there's a put wall there. And what happens is if you get through these levels, market makers have to start rushing to hedge. And that's just the way 0 DTE works now. Everything's based on a one-day expiry. So they'll have to rush to hedge at the same time. And if you remember the short I did this morning, I said, look, they got to get it back above 4,300. They tried, they couldn't. And we've just been pushing down just, in a grinding state all day long on the SPX here. I will say, I can't believe, I'm not sure if I told you guys, I know I talked to my members about this last week, but you can see now that we have completed a measured move. Sorry, it might not be the straightest, but close enough. So there's a measured move right down to 42.70, right? There we are, low of the day, 42.69, and we're basically at the lows of the day right now. Doesn't mean we can't go through it a little bit. The fact that we're going to close at the lows of the day here, there is 20 minutes left, but I think if they were going to do a rescue operation, it would have been done a while ago. That doesn't mean we can't pop off the lows, get some short covering into the close, that type of thing, but that said, we're basically, closing at the lows of the day for the most part. So I don't think a rescue operation could happen. We have completed that measure move. That said, I would be shocked if they gap this up tomorrow. I think it's got to gap down, right? Like I said, I think the VIX wants 20 here. You're not really seeing any panic yet. All day long, I was like looking at, a Twitter feed and everything else, people trying to buy the dip. It'll stop dipping when people get too scared to buy it. And I don't think we're quite there yet. But if you get a big flush tomorrow morning, then we could get into that kind of that state there. We are getting oversold. If you guys follow RSI, daily just about to tick oversold there. The 4-hour is pretty divergent, so it's something to keep an eye on. But again, when you have the 4-hour, the RSI didn't matter the entire time we were going up here, right? Look at the NQ. I joked about this. I said it was living. If we look at the 4-hour. It was living above 70 the whole time. So look it found support at 70 on this time. It found support at 65 here. So especially when you get panic, if you get panic, things can go lower. By the way, speaking of the NQ, look at that 4-hour 20 MA rejection and starting to head towards that 14.6 area, which is a double bottom from August. But in any case, that's what's going on here. Now, what else is going on? The market's throwing a tantrum because the Fed, it's finally taking the Fed seriously. What we were saying this entire time, the whole way up, interest rates, people were complaining, look, the 10-year is rallying, why aren't the markets going down? The market didn't believe the Fed. I think the market finally believes the Fed, and we may be seeing a tantrum. I floated this idea out there. I know it's really early because we're still, like 5% off the highs. But if we start to break down and really break down, you might be closer to a Fed pivot than you think. Why do I say that? Look at VNQ. So if we're looking at real estate, this is representative of real estate investment trusts. Everybody knows commercial real estate's a problem. This is, you close the month down here, this is over with. And we look at JNK, I've talked about that the last couple of days. That's breaking, right? This is junk bonds. If these things break, the Fed will be forced to pivot. I don't care what inflation is at. If that happens, the next hype sector will be commodities. Lots of these commodities have been, have had big runs in 2022. A lot of them have come back in. Crude obviously has already taken off. The SPR was keeping that down. But, you have things like nat gas, wheat, soybeans, corn. So these things will moon if that happens. My kind of theory right now is maybe, and gold breaking down a little bit today, but maybe that's why gold is held up so well with the strong dollar and strong yield. These are just ideas I'm floating out there. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I do want to make this documented just so in case this does happen soon. Will this go down in a straight line? Not without a major catalyst. We'd have to, I think tomorrow we should bounce. The monthly close will be important. End of week close will be important. Obviously bounce targets, first you got to get through 434. And then it's the 100 MA and then the gap fill. But right now, everybody told me that head and shoulder was going to fail, but it's playing out pretty nicely so far. So again, be careful. Only take the best setups right now. Tomorrow, I do think we gap down though. QQQ, you have a little bit of support at 350 here. This is just daily chart support. The weekly, everybody knows 354.71. It's that pivot. Also, we're kind of breaking this weekly trend line here too. If we don't hold these levels by the end of the week, again, look at the air pocket. There's nothing here on the weekly all the way to 320. So be aware of that. IWM trying to hang on. You got a trend line here. It's not the best, but right in that 174 area. Failed bear flag there. So that should be support there for the Russell coming up. Tried to go green earlier today and then just the selling just overwhelmed it. So this is getting very oversold. That head and shoulder, by the way, is set down to 165, just so you know. Dow down 1% on the day, lost the 200 MA, 331.50 is your next big area. It doesn't mean it can't bounce before then, but that's kind of the big area I'd be interested in on the DIA, but that did come in as well. Semiconductors starting to put in bear flag, so down 1 3/4. Again, just like the Qs, big fat air pocket here. Built no supports there, just a big fat NVIDIA FOMO gap, right? So that is vulnerable. Be careful with that. Speaking of NVIDIA, there's your master level on NVIDIA, 403. IGV also getting hit today, so that's through the 340 support. Finally tested this trend line, so we'll see if that can get a bounce there. This is your big area there on IGV, 330. So you want to close above that, specifically a weekly close. If we take that out, then this is vulnerable bound to, 315, maybe even 305. Transports here on the weaker side, this still got to go test that 200, 14,750. There's your bull flag breakout. Probably gets a bounce there. If this pierces that 200 tomorrow, I'd say this is definitely a prime bounce candidate. There's also, again, if we go back to kind of that initial move here, right into a 618, right? So 14,675, right in that area. Good support there for the transports. Watch that. All right. Interest rates here. That's the story. 2-year holding up. 5's flat. 10's continuing higher. 30's continuing higher. What's going on with the yield curves? Starting to normalize a little bit more. Could this be telling us that a Fed pivot's closer than normal? It also could be telling us higher for longer, right? Because the 30-year is correcting, not the 2-year. Keep that in mind. But 4.75 should be some monthly resistance for the 30-year, but just be careful. Yields can overshoot when they get going. XHB could be putting in a bear flag there as well. That still has supported that trend line. If it's 78 rejects, though, it can break that. And then it's down to 72 to $70. VNQ, we already talked about. Not good, right? Not a good chart. A little oversold, obviously, but it's not telling us good things. XLF into this trend line as well. So that is testing. I'll say right now, probably 33 is going to be good support there on the daily for XLF if that trend line doesn't hold. KRE inside day, that's actually hanging on. I told you guys 41 area would be decent support, and that's holding up for now. KBE trying to hold on as well. Broker dealers took a dump today down to 480 and just kind of stalling out at that 100-day moving average. Again, that's oversold as well. So we'll see if that can get a bounce. Crude again holding up another 1%. Still like it up into the mid 90s right now. Don't really see any issues there. XLE, that was one of the strong sectors today, down 70 cents. XOP, same thing. Inside day and OIH, if just looking by these charts, you would never know what happened today. They're hanging in there okay, but still doing consolidation if you ask me. CCJ finally had a red day, down 2%. Let's not make too much out of it. I can't chase it up here, but it's still holding up. URNM, same thing. It's parabolic. Don't chase it if you own it. Trail your stop. But I wouldn't do anything else with it otherwise. Nat gas, fractionally higher here today. That does roll over tomorrow, new contract. So we'll see how that performs. Nothing's changed here. Nothing, trend line's still the same. It'll bounce off of that. And we'll see how that goes into tomorrow. Dollar index, much higher again. So 106.20. This can still get into 106.50, I think. But it is getting into a resistance zone, so keep that in mind. Again, if we were to continue down, if things were going to break, but the market was going to price in something, the dollar would probably tell us first. And this is a resistance level, so just keep that in mind. But I still have that, maybe 106.50 it could get up to. So keep that on your radar. Gold slipping again today. The reason why, now you might say, well, Aaron, why wouldn't you want to buy gold in this situation if the Fed's going to turn around here, if the market's going to force the Fed to turn around? Gold will underperform during a drawdown, just the way it goes. Margin selling spills into it. When that happens, then you buy everything you can. Until then, that's why you guys probably figure out I have not been bullish on gold for a long time, even though this pattern is still really good on the monthly. If we have a washout, this is not going to, it's going to bottom first. It'll bottom first, but it's not going to perform well at first. And gold's starting to slip here. It's got to hold 1900. Silver also backing off as well. This is another power pump candidate commodity if the Fed pivots. Platinum is as well. I still think that has one more push down. Palladium is as well. I also still think that has one more push down. And copper is as well. But I still think this needs to come down possibly into 340. All right. Bitcoin here. Lastly, but not least, of course. It's hanging in there, right? Again, you wouldn't know anything was going on if it was for Bitcoin today. 50 MA rejection below the 20 weekly pattern has not changed. Still bearish in sidebar, possibly to 21.5. I'm not sure how this would react to the Fed pivot. There's people that tell you it'll moon to 100,000. There's people that tell you to crash. I don't know. It is a risk asset, but you have to consider right now the crypto market's very illiquid, and we just don't have enough history of it performing in this type of environment. But again, those are still the levels. 21.5 there could be something to watch. Okay, I know I got way ahead of myself with some of those projections, but let's just go into tomorrow. So we are puking a little bit more here, or at least the Russell was, so maybe the spiders are trying to hold up. I think the VIX tags and pierces 20 tomorrow. At that point, I think we could get a bounce here, but I think they got to flush this thing out a little bit more. Too many people were way too willing to buy the dip. I saw a lot of people calling for a year-end rally. It's an election year, seasonality, this type of thing, that type of thing. And maybe it finally took all year to get enough bulls on board, and they were just starving for a dip to buy. And yesterday, like I said very explicitly in this video, this was not a dip to buy. That was not a V-shaped recovery. Tomorrow we could get one, but we'll see what we get here. Now the next shoe to drop is, do we get a V-shape, and does it become Jan 2020, where everybody gets wiped out because everybody's been waiting all year for a dip to buy, and the macro finally takes over and positioning finally takes over. Something to keep an eye on, but definitely don't take anything for granted in this market. There are things that are, I wouldn't make this up. Okay. Like I wouldn't say this if there was, it wasn't serious, but when I, say stuff like VNQ is breaking down, and we know commercial real estate's a problem, and we know junk bonds have not participated in this entire NASDAQ melt up, there's a massive divergence there, and things may be starting to break here as the rate hike lag effects start to come into play. Anyways, guys, going to wrap it up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. I will talk to you guys all tomorrow.